All right. In the name of the Father, Son, and Spirit. One day. How's everybody doing? I saw wonderful pictures from the boat. This is such a beautiful time. Yes, I miss you too. I love to smile. Actually, smiling is very important, you know? Sometimes I wonder, you know, what Jesus was like when he was just walking around, you know? He was playing with the children, and he was probably smiling a lot, right? So, smile. By the way, when you smile, it releases chemicals in your brain that make you happier. If you ever want to do like a little test at home one time, experiment, just take a pencil and put it between your teeth, but don't let your lips touch the pencil. It will force your mouth into a smiling position, and you're going to feel happier. Like, just to show, this is how our bodies work, really. Yes, and everyone around you will be happy. The happier you are, happiness is contagious, which is, yeah, but, and so are bad things. So, like, just do good. So by God's grace today, this evening, we're going to continue our series, and we're going to talk about organizational challenges. I want to say, it's important for me to say this, that I don't know a lot of the details about the church, your specific parish. So maybe some of the things we'll discuss, you're already doing it. And so maybe you don't need to hear it. But I want us all to think about it so that we can support the organization of the church, okay? Because there's a lot going on, a lot of different services, a lot of people involved, people coming in and out of the service. The people we're serving are evolving a lot too, and we need to be aware of all of these things, okay? This evening will be a little short, okay? Just a little. But before we talk about the evolution of things in the church, I want to talk about a very important point. It's critical. The faith of the church is perfect and unchangeable. The faith of the church is perfect and unchangeable. Okay? And at Servants, we need to make this distinction. The faith of the church is perfect, but the people of the church are not perfect. Okay? The faith is perfect, but the people are not perfect, right? We're included in this group of people, right? We're not perfect, right? We know that. Which means that even if we have the perfect faith, we can make mistakes, and we're growing. And actually, that's something I really appreciate about this group and the conversations between the lectures. I feel from everyone I speak with that they want to grow. They want to be better. In everything in their life, they want to be better. And that's good, because imagine the alternative. It's a very scary thing, the alternative, right? So the faith is perfect and unchangeable, but the people of the church are always evolving, which means we can get better. There's an opportunity to be even better than where we are now. What doesn't change our faith? And I just want to list, we're not going to go deep into this, but I just want to list the high-level points, just so you know when we say our faith, in general, what do we mean by that? Our faith in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, never going to change, right? The incarnation and the nature of Christ, never going to change. The necessity of the sacraments, going to change. This is our faith. Fellowship in the body of Christ, which means we have to be connected with each other. This is critical for Christianity, right? This is our faith. Holy tradition, it's not going to change, right? There's some other traditions that are like, they're not the capital T strict traditions, right? But the main traditions of the church, they're not going to change, right? The general structure of the church, Christ, the bishops, the priests, the deacons, etc. This is our faith, okay? When you add like, Amir al-Khidmah, this is important, but this is an organizational thing. It's not bad, it's very good, right? We need it, because the service is so big, right? But this is not like the faith of the church, right? You guys see the difference? It's a good thing. It's very good and important, but it's not the faith of the church, okay? Now, it's not against the faith either. It's in alignment with it. It agrees with it. What is evolving, though? What is evolving in the church? Individualistic versus collectivistic culture. Those are very big words. I'm going to talk about this. It's actually a very important point, right? That we see in one church family, one church community, we have a group of people who recently came from Egypt, which is a collectivistic culture, and we have a lot of people who have been here for a few generations, which this Western individualistic culture. We're going to talk more about this, but just before I move on and I don't explain the words, individualistic means that when you talk to an individualistic person from an individualistic culture, they're focused on their own personal goals. Like, who am I, what do I need, what am I going to do? A collectivistic culture is a culture where we're focused on the goals of the group. What is best for the group, even if it compromises me personally, right? Just some simple examples, right? I remember a father had a very, very good son. Very good son. He's a good father, a very good son. And no concerns. You wouldn't have any concerns about this son getting into trouble or anything. And it came time for this son to go to graduate school. And so the son applied, got in, and the school was far away. They were very happy he got in. And then they even signed the lease for the apartment. And then the day before they were going to move, the father said, "How can you do this to us? To us. You're going to leave us, right? How can you do this to us, right?" Another example of a collectivistic culture, we know it. You guys know it's very common in Egypt. When the child gets married, they live above the family, right? The next floor above, right? This is actually it's not just an Egyptian thing. In the Indian culture, they do very similar things, right? The wife gets married and moves in with the parents of the husband, right? It's very, very common. Is this better or worse? No, that's not what we're talking about at all. We're just, as servants, we need to know the differences. You guys get what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm saying if you ignore the differences, you're going to miss something in your understanding of the service. What else is evolving? Technology. With all of the benefits and also all of the disadvantages that come with technology. This is something that's evolving in the church, right? Okay, you guys remember the big debates about, is it okay to hold the iPad in the church versus the book? You guys remember this? There's a lot of talk about that, right? But you see, it's evolving. This is not the faith. It's not the faith, right? It's an organizational point. Also, it happens here, and feel free to disagree with me, and some communities are different. On average here, there's higher average levels of education and experience at younger ages. So we find if you just take people with, college degrees, master's degrees, doctorates, you find that they have it, but at younger ages here, right? And they have a lot of this. I'm not saying you don't have it in a collectivistic culture, but you come here and you find that there's people, they're young and they don't have a lot of experience, but they have a lot of education, right? A lot of education, right? Also, there's new social problems. We already started talking about them, right? This is not even comparing cultures. This is just what's happening. And there's a lot of new social problems. So I want to talk about two important verses to tell you what the Bible says about these 2 points, about the faith and then about the organization, okay, or the culture. When it comes to our faith, and this is very small, but it's also in the thing, in Galatians chapter 1 it says, "As we have said before," this is St. Paul, "as we have said before, so now I say again." Look at how strong this is. "If anyone preaches any other gospel to you than what you have received, let him be accursed." This is I think the Greek word here is anathema, like kicked out, right? We don't want anyone to teach anything contrary to the faith, okay? "For do I now persuade men or God? Or do I seek to please men? For if I still pleased men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ. But I make known to you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached by me is not according to man.
Our faith is not something that we invented. We didn't create the faith, okay? For I neither received it from man, nor was I taught it, but it came through the revelation of Jesus Christ. So what is the message here? When it comes to our faith, we are seeing that we have to have faithfulness to the truth. We have to be faithful to the faith. We have to be honest, and we have to be accurate, and we cannot deviate, okay? At the same time, there's an additional message, also from St. Paul. When it comes to meeting the evolving needs of the people, they're evolving. For though I am free from all men, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win the more. And to the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might win the Jews. To those who are under the law, as under the law, that I might win those who are under the law. To those who are without law, as without law. Not, and you see he even adds this little point to be very clear. Not as without law toward God, like I still have the faith, okay? But under law toward Christ. Like he's saying, like I'm just trying to reach them. I need to reach them. I will do anything. Anything is on the table as long as I don't compromise the faith. That's it. That's what he's saying, right? That I might win those who are without law. To the weak I became as weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. Now this I do for the gospel's sake, that I may be partaker of it with you. What is the message here? Compassion and empathy to the needs of the people. Let me just give you an example. If you have a young person that you're serving, and you're talking with them, and there's a bunch of issues that they have, right? And then it comes up, one of you mentions fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays, right? We know we fast Wednesdays and Fridays. This is a very old fast, by the way. It's from the 1st century, this fast on Wednesdays and Fridays. But are you going to, at this point, start to push on this kid to tell him to fast Wednesdays and Fridays when you have to deal with all these other issues that are going on in their lives, right? So am I saying that we disagree with the fast? No, but I'm saying we have to have compassion and empathy with each person, right? Do you guys see what we're talking about now? Okay, all right. So before we continue with the challenges, I want to just mention some key principles. Saint Athanasius said something very beautiful. We should actually memorize this saying. It's actually a very popular saying. We have to hold fast to the very tradition, teaching, and faith of the Catholic. It means the universal church, not the Roman Catholic Church, from the very beginning. And look at this part here, which the Logos gave, the apostles preached, and the fathers preserved. Okay? So what we are teaching is what Christ gave us, what the apostles preached to us, and what the fathers preserved. Like they kept it, right? They kept it. And he says, St. Athanasius says, upon this the church is founded. This is the foundation of the church, okay? The other principle is reach everyone on a personal level with empathy and compassion as Christ did. As Christ did. Christ, our Lord Jesus Christ, who gave us the faith, also reached everyone on a personal level with compassion and empathy. The word compassion is so beautiful. Do you know what compassion is? Compassion is empathy plus action. It's empathy plus action. Okay? Which means I become aware of your needs and then I take an action. That's what compassion means. Okay? Just 3 examples. We talked about this earlier, and Jesus said to her, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." Enough. He didn't need more than that. You guys get what I'm saying? He didn't need. There's a lot of things she still needs, but this was enough for now. Okay. In the men who were blind, it says, so Jesus had compassion and touched their eyes, and immediately their eyes received sight, and they followed him. Another man who was leprous. The leprous person had not been touched. We take for granted being touched. During COVID, me personally, I like to hug people. Right? I love to shake hands. I love that, right? Just me personally. And I remember during COVID, somebody said a statement, and once they said it, it really touched my heart. They said, I miss just touching people. We don't even touch each other anymore, right? And once they said that, I said, yeah, that's exactly what I'm missing. We don't hug, we're nothing, right? And it's very hard, especially because the church that I grew up in, like the priests that I grew up with, they were very like big huggers. Like they always see you. And I remember when our eldest priest passed away, everyone had the same story about him. When you walk into church, he puts his hands up like this, and everyone had this story about the eldest priest, right? And I remember this. And when I was younger and I had troubles in my life, I used to look forward to those hugs in church. I needed them. I really needed them in my life, right? Jesus had compassion on the leprous man who had not been touched because he was unclean. And so before he healed him, he touched him, right? So please keep these two principles in mind. Okay, the first challenge, we only have 3 challenges this evening. The first challenge is limited resources. Some of these challenges, by the way, for this talk, some of them are not going to change. So enjoy. Like, is the rest of your life is going to be like this, okay? But we have to manage well. Jesus said, then he said to them, the harvest truly is great, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. The laborers are few. The family of servants, us, will always be limited in capacity, and not just in capacity, but also in the types of resources, right? We will practically never run out of people that need Christ. If all the people in our church became very, very strong, faithful people, we barely scratch the surface of the service we have, right? If all your Sunday school kids are performing miracles, right? You barely scratch the surface of what we have to do as servants of God, right? So you're never going to run out, right? There's always going to be limits. But the problem is this limitation can lead to frustration and despondency. Despondency means like giving up. Like, I don't care anymore. Forget about this. I can't, right? What are the causes? We're limited because there's always more work to do. Yes. Also, the current church organization uses many part-time volunteers. Almost all of us are volunteers, right? Like we're volunteers. That's just how it works right now. And very few full-time dedicated servants, right? Like think about who is full-time. It's very, 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 very few people. Very few people full-time, right? And everyone else is a volunteer, right? And they're part-time. So they're not like, thinking about the service. When you're at work and you're working 40 hours a week, right? You're thinking about work a lot. You're doing a good job, right? And you're thinking about it. But when you're doing you have a side job, you're not very focused, right? So it's a tough position to be in for an organization, right? To have very few dedicated people and a ton of people who are part-time, right? Also, some of the expertise we need now is scarce. And there's a few things here. There's a bunch of different types of professionals, but the simple example is like therapists, for example, right? We just need people to sit down and talk. And why is that, by the way? Because society is evolving, right? When our grandparents were living or just going about life was much simpler, right? You work very hard. Maybe it's a lot of manual work. You come home, you're tired. There's no concept of emotional intelligence. Nobody's talking about that, right? You tell the husband, spend quality time with your wife. They're not with all that stuff, right? They didn't get it, right? Is it bad? No, it's just we are advancing as a people. And I want you to please appreciate this point. It seems a little abstract. There was a research done on athletes in the Olympics and their ability to perform decades ago and now. Did you know that the average Olympian performs better than the average Olympian decades ago? Like they run faster. Literally, they run faster, right? So what that means is we are learning as a people how to be more optimized, right? We know how to use our bodies differently. We also know how to use our hearts differently, right? We find out when we talk about, active listening, very simple concept, right? Active listening. This is something we're growing in now. And now it's kind of like a standard, it's a baseline, expectation. Anybody, all of us, right, it can be like a disrespect. You're not supposed to look me in the eye, unless you're my equal, right? So a lot of things there. Also, another cause is we may not be asking for or delegating enough to those who can serve. Maybe we're not doing that. It may not be clear to most parishioners how they can join the service also. Some people, they think like the servants are like this different class of people, and we don't know how to get into this group. They're special, there's something special about them, and that's it. And so if we give that impression, then what ends up happening is that people, they don't know how to join us and serve with us, right? And we don't want to give that impression that we're a special group of people, right? Most churches don't, another resource point is most churches don't have a way of generating revenue and rely almost exclusively on donations, right? And I don't know the situation for this parish, but this is reality. Like, just know this is real, right? So what do we do about it? Number one, pray for God to compensate for your limitations as a servant and as a church. Because I said, the limitations will never end, right? You're always going to be limited, right? And so we pray that God compensates for our limitations, right? Even if you're preparing a lesson, or if you're going to go talk to someone, whatever it is, whatever you're going to do in your service, ask God, please God, I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to do my best, but please compensate for my weaknesses. I have weaknesses, God. Please compensate for my weaknesses. Accept that the limitations will be there and serve with faith. Serve with faith. I want us, this is a spiritual point for us. When I serve, I have to serve with faith. I have faith that God is working. God is going to do something. Create a list of needs and communicate it to the church, right? So sometimes, you see, what I'm trying to avoid here is that there might be a lot of potential around us and we're not using it, okay? A lot of great people around us and we're not using them, okay? So if we have certain needs, ask people to help, right? Say, what are those needs? Write the list down and communicate it to people. The other thing is, I remember a very wise woman said to me about a really good servant, and she said, a good servant, she said, you see that man? He's a good servant because he builds other servants. A good servant builds servants. As you serve, guide those you serve to serve with you. Please don't forget about this point, okay? When you're serving, think, is there an opportunity to bring in someone to help me? Just to support me in something small, right? Something very small. Think about how you got involved in the service. You know how I got involved in the service? The main thing was my role models were serving. That's it. And then they said, Makar, come and help. And they're my role models. So I'm going to say yes. That's it. It was not anything special, no ceremony, nothing. Later, I started to learn, right? And I said, wow, okay, I'm doing this, but there's a lot of things I have no idea what I'm doing. What do I do in this situation? What do I do in that situation? Which topics do I need to learn about? But so what I'm saying is that you have the opportunity to build these servants, delegate responsibilities and give them feedback. Also, think of creative ways to raise money for the church and speak about tithing when the right opportunity comes. So it's kind of a sensitive topic to talk about donations, right? But so we don't talk about it all the time, right? But when the opportunity comes, like sometimes the Sunday gospel is about it. So we have to you give the sermon, right? You talk about it, right? And we have to encourage our children, just to give you, even just our children, our biological children. Like, I remember my dad, when I was younger, he would give me $1.50 every Sunday, right? $1 bill and 2 quarters, right? And he said, the $1 is for you to buy candy, and the 50 cents is for donation in Sunday school, right? And I didn't even know anything. I'm just doing what I'm happy I got $1, right? So I'm just putting this, but over time, you have this habit, right? And so we need to deliver this message that we give something to God. And this is a separate topic, but it's very important, right? And if the church needs money, we can create a committee to focus on improving this, because there's a lot that can be done now. And now fundraising is a big, it's like a profession. right? There's a skill of doing it. And it's a very nice thing when you see people who know how to get resources and talk to people. It's amazing what people can do. All right. Another organizational challenge is balancing between seniority and meritocracy. Okay. By the way, this talk is the most sensitive talk I'm giving because I don't want to overstep in anything that's happening, and I'm just a guest, So please feel free to correct me in anything. Balancing between seniority and meritocracy. We said before that Egypt has an old and collectivistic culture, while the United States has a young and individualistic culture. Right? Like Egypt has centuries of history. The American culture that we have now, it's just not even 300 years old, right? It's like it's young. It's it's like a little new culture, right? Little baby culture, right? So the other thing though is that the United States is better off on many socioeconomic dimensions, right? Like even people who came from Egypt and are not happy with their socioeconomic status here, a lot of them still are better off than they were in Egypt, right? And I see this a lot, right? Not everybody, but this is what I see. So in Egypt, we have a strong system of respect for seniority, okay? And I'm not saying what's better or worse. Please, I am not saying that one is better or worse. I'm saying we have to know that this difference exists. That's all I'm saying, okay? So please don't take me as I'm being critical. I'm not at all. I'm just saying if you don't know this difference, you're going to keep hitting like a wall, and you don't know why. And people are not cooperating with you, and you don't understand why. Because it's because of these differences.
Yeah.
Yes?
Meritocracy.
Yes, meritocracy, yes. So meritocracy is very simple, that it's like you deserve it. You worked hard for it, so you deserve it and you get it. Right? When you're not operating in the system of meritocracy, you find because someone is older, you have to listen to them. That's it. Even if you, let's say we're talking about, I don't know, finances in the church, right? You might have someone who is a financial professional advising many nonprofit organizations in their work, right? But that person, when they come to church, they have to listen to Uncle so-and-so because they're older and they have 40 years of experience in the service. So this is a very tough thing. Do you guys get what I'm trying to explain? It's a very tough thing to manage. You have someone who is very highly qualified and is already doing it. But when you enter into this mixed culture, we're now operating under a system of respect for seniority. Right? Even if someone has earned the credibility to be able to advise, right? This is a very tough thing to do. But why am I saying one is better or worse? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's hard because you might have people who are capable, but they're stuck. They can't move. It's like they're tied up. They can't do anything. And then you have people on the other side who think, where is the respect? I'm going to talk about this. Where is the respect? Don't you know who I am? What I've done? I supported 10 churches when I was in Egypt, being brought up. I actually know, my mother's father was an architect building churches, right? But you, 70, 80 years old, but it's possible that someone who got a master's in architecture and they're 25 years old might know more. It's possible, right? Right or wrong? I'm not saying they definitely know more, but I'm saying it's possible. What's most important is that they work together. Together, right? It's not that one should leave. The one who should leave is the one who's not willing to work together. That's the one who should leave. Right? That's the one who should leave. But we need to work together because we're a church. We need harmony among us. So meritocracy is you have a reason to you earned it. You earned it. Okay? You worked hard for it and you earned it. Seniority is just based on age. That's it. It's just age. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Thanks for helping me. So this leads to many gaps in our service. What are the gaps? What ends up happening in this cultural difference, right? Number one, I want to talk about how the gap is experienced from someone who comes from the collectivistic culture. So think about, you're in the point of view of someone who comes from the collectivistic culture. And you see that you're not getting this respect or whatever you're looking for, not even just respect, but you're expecting a community to support you, right? Like I have a client who feels very unsupported by their community in church. And then there's other people, they don't even think about support from community. They don't even think about it. It's not even a question. Even if they're not receiving it, they don't think about it because they're coming from an individualistic culture, right? So, from someone who's from the collectivistic culture, they feel a lack of empathy. They feel like people don't care about me, right? And nobody respects or is aware of the struggles that I'm experiencing here. They might even feel alone. They feel a lack of respect for their experience and stature in the community. I remember one time a young person who was like a very big corporate professional made a presentation and I reviewed it with them, and they gave, because they asked me for my opinion, and then they showed it to a much older servant in the church, right? And to make some recommendations. The older servant took this and they said, what are you doing? What do you think this is? And they gave it back to them. They said, I didn't even expect this from you. After all these years, everything, we raised you. And they just gave it back to them. And this young person was so motivated to help. They spent hours working, right? Working to help the church the best they could. But what ended up happening was just squashed their spirit, right? So the person who comes from the collectivistic culture, but I'm not saying that the person who dismissed this was a bad person. They're actually a very good person. But they feel a lack of respect for their experience. So I want you to be empathetic to their experience, right? They feel that, I have a lot of experience. How can someone come and just tell me what to do, right? They feel disrespected. They're worried about becoming irrelevant. You guys get what that means? Like, I'm worried that if this people from this other culture get too active, no one's gonna need me anymore. And what's gonna happen then to me, right? They may feel a lack of community support, and especially for parents of younger children, they can feel this a lot. They feel like the community doesn't support them, especially for their children, because this thing that we're talking about in the church is actually often happening in families, in the home too, right? You have a generation of parents from a collectivistic culture, and then you have kids who are growing up in an individualistic culture. So you're dealing with this battle all the time, right? At home, in your own home, right? So how is this gap experienced by someone from the individualistic culture? Is everybody with me? I know I'm saying these words, collectivistic, and I can't even believe I'm saying it so fast and so quickly. It's so hard to say. There's so many syllables. The people coming from the individualistic culture, they feel a lack of respect for their qualifications and experience. Let me give you an example, right? I'll just use myself. Like, I studied therapy. Right? I studied this stuff, right? So, when you're studying this stuff, you're sitting there and you could spend days and books on one question, one topic that has to do with life, right? And so we work really hard, right? We work very, very hard. Like one time I took a whole class on sex therapy, right? And you know what we had to do? We had to do like a family tree about the sexual messages that we received from our family. And we had to write a whole paper about that and talk about shame and talk about abuse and talk about this and talk about all of this stuff. And we're reading books about abuse and all. We're just going through it, right? So it's a lot of work. But it's also very easy for someone who has been serving for a long time to just tell me to my face, you're wrong about this. They won't even accept any feedback or anything, right? So you can feel a lack of respect for your qualifications and experience. Does it mean that I'm always right? Definitely not. Does it mean that I don't have a lot to learn from everyone else? No, I have a lot to learn. I have a lot to learn, right? But it means we have to work together. If one dismisses the other, we're in trouble. Okay? This is when the trouble comes. We have to work together. Another experience of someone from the individualistic culture, and you'll be surprised, that they feel like they're second priority because they're a new generation in an Egyptian church. Can you believe that? That the people who grew up here can feel like they're the second priority? Because, they come into church, a lot of people are speaking Arabic, and they don't know Arabic very well. And they feel like, oh, I don't know what's going on. There's a lot going on here. And you know what's good? One thing that's beautiful about the collectivistic culture is they have a lot of fun together. They have a lot of fun, right? They're laughing, they're remembering old experiences and old times. And the individualistic culture doesn't have that in the same way. I don't go to Egypt often, but when I go to Egypt, I feel like what? Yeah. It's just a lot of old things, like fun times. They say in Arabic, just sit down.
We have a tawla meeting in the church.
Oh, yeah. Is that good? Yeah, that's amazing.
I grew up in Egypt, and they like to get together.
Yeah.
But they start first with the prayer, and somebody give them a talk, and then they start. I told them that if you want to do this in the church, you have to do
and that's a lot of fun, right? Like that's a lot of fun that they have, right?
And they don't miss a single meeting.
It's so much fun. Like it's great. And that's one of the beautiful things about the collectivistic culture. It's as if like everyone is a family. Everyone's family, right? It's so beautiful, really. So when someone is from the individualistic culture, they feel like maybe I don't belong here. Maybe, I'm second priority. The church is really for the people who are speaking Arabic or the people who came from Egypt, and I'm just, a new person. And maybe, what's kind of crazy sometimes? Sometimes also the collectivistic culture feels the same way. I came here in America, I'm nobody, I don't know anything, and everyone is serving, and everybody wants to pray in English now, and what am I going to do? And you see, everybody feels out of place, right? Like it's weird how it works. So for the people from the individualistic culture, so the collectivistic culture, they fear that they will become irrelevant. The ones from the individualistic culture, they feel that the church will become irrelevant for them. The church is not relevant for me anymore. Which is very sad. Very sad, right? This church is just doing its thing. It's not for me. They leave it. They just say, this is the church. Okay, I got it. It's good. It's a thing, but it's not for me. Right? You guys see how these things can happen? And they might feel a lack of community support for their own ambitions. They have ambitions, individual ambitions. They want to achieve certain things, and they might feel a lack of community support. So, what are the causes of this? Excuse me.
But this feeling, we can have it even if you still live in Egypt. Between a church, if you move to another church, you're going to have the same feeling. It's not just a matter of change of cultures.
Yeah.
You still can have it in the same culture with same community.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's more emphasized.
It's more pronounced when you have such a big gap. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it's just I'm talking kind of like the main issue. But there's many versions of this. Many versions of it. You're absolutely right. Thank you for that point. And you see, sometimes, my beloved brothers and sisters, we, as servants, we have a social responsibility. We have a social responsibility. We think that I'm going to come to church, I'm going to do my service thing, and I'm going to hang out with my friends. But what needs to happen is I'm a servant. I have to look for those who need service. There are people who come, they walk into the room, and not in this room, but like into the church building, and they have no one to talk to them. Anxiety is much more common than you think, actually. Like it's so common. it's probably safe to assume, like if someone you don't know and you're wondering, I wonder if they have anxiety, assume yes. They have anxiety, okay? They're new to a place, they don't know anybody, right? So we kind of like we compartmentalize our service. It's not that I serve, it's I am a servant, right? It's not that I do a service, it's I am a servant. Which means that when someone is here, I need to be looking out. Who is alone? And believe me, from the bottom of my heart, if you can make a difference in this person's life by simply being the one who talks to them, you can change their life. Just be present. Be there. Talk to them. Because it makes a big difference. The difference between having nobody to having one person is that's like 60 or 70% of the goal. Just that one person. Yes?
I agree with you, but I was hoping that you say we need in the church people who are knowledgeable in the Word of God, not in therapy. Because when we go for therapy at the church, it's like because we don't have faith in the Word of God that it heals. Yeah, the Word of God heals. So we should look for people who have knowledge in the Word of God more than people who have knowledge in therapy. That's my thinking.
So what I want to say, actually, I see where you're going, and I want to kind of just adjust the point a little bit. It's not either or. It's both.
You can't have both. I'm sorry, but with respect, I
Sure.
disagree. Because therapy focus on the person, the Word of God focus on God. I don't think you can have really both. Well, you can have both if the person has mental illness. Of course, we need that. But when we talk about the regular person who's just looking for healing, we should just the Word of God. Or at least we need to focus on that. And that's actually what the church needs is people who have experiential experience or experiential knowledge. يعني معرفة اختبارية. We need elders. يعني in a church, in the Bible, whatever in Egypt or in America, those are two different cultures. But when we're talking about the church is one culture, whatever the country is. And the church in God's eyes, according to the Bible, there are elders in the church who have years of experience with God. Age has to be respected. It's not about someone who will study and come and become someone in the church. It's about experience with God, with the Word of God, and that's what we need more than therapy.
Yeah.
We may need therapy, but this is what we need more.
I think these things, like with love and respect, I think these things are not mutually exclusive. Like just because you have one, sorry? Yeah, they don't contradict each other. Like actually in the Wisdom of Sirach, a very beautiful book, it says something so important. It says, do not neglect the physician, the doctor. It doesn't say Christian doctor, believing doctor. It says, do not neglect the physician. Do not neglect the ointments that the pharmacist gives you, right? So what I'm trying to say is that, like, it's not either or. And I'm going to talk about this in a moment. We need the faith. And I don't know if you were here for the beginning of this, maybe you were, but we need the faith. We need it. There's no doubt about it. But it is also possible to be right about the faith and to completely, you know who is right about the faith? You know who has the most faith? Probably more than all of us, maybe at least me, the devil. He knows theology very well. And St. James says, even the demons believe and tremble. Like they have faith. I believe and I don't tremble. It says, worship God in fear and trembling, and I'm distracted. And my phone is vibrating. You know? So what I'm trying to say is like, this is like a cognitive thing that happens where we can get stuck in either or thinking. And I'm not disagreeing with the importance of the faith and people who have experience. What I'm saying is all of these people need to work together. We need all of these experts. We cannot compromise the faith. But also, if all you're doing is teaching faith, you're going to miss a lot of social needs. So Yes. I don't know who raised their hand first, so who wants to go first? I'm going to look this way and someone's...
Seniority. In this case, it's usually ladies first. Ladies first. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I just worked like to piggyback off Dr. Sharif's point, is we don't want to treat the church as like a place of self-help, like, or even a hospital technically, like Abuna Masalan, like, you know, let's say I broke my leg, I don't go to Abuna and say, Abuna, help me fix my leg. No, I go to the doctor. Yeah. Right? Abuna can pray for me, and same thing with therapy and psychology. And I think that's
but the early church actually made hospitals.
Right.
Like, go to the doctor, go to the therapist. At the office, not at
but you don't want the therapist to be in the church?
No.
We don't want
physical illness is different than...
I'm just saying the foundation of the church. Yes. Like, because you're saying it's two together. The foundation, the number one, is the faith. And then we can have those added layers. But the essential value is the faith. And the
yes, and I hope I made that point very clear that we cannot compromise the faith. Like, I would rather...
I'm sorry, maybe we're missing on defining the faith. Because according to the little Jude, faith was delivered once.
Yes.
So he was talking about the Bible, okay, the Word of God.
Yes.
So this is what we need to be healed by at the church. If we want to be healed by the therapist, we'll go to the office, go to the hospital.
But can't your healing come, like... You know, okay. I also have some things to say, but I want to give everyone a chance to have a good discussion. No, I want to have a good discussion. It's a very good point. It's a very good point.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you, and actually, I hope that we can continue to listen. Maybe have questions more at the end.
Okay.
There's just something that's just itching to say is that Dr. Sharif بالذات he's a mentor to us, and I can't imagine in حضرتك when you go and you are serving a person in a therapeutic session that you don't first lift up your heart in faith, asking for God to use your knowledge to heal the person before you. Is that fair to say? معلش I'm saying humility.
Where am I sitting? Is it at the church or
doesn't?
Why does it matter?
I don't think that this is another forgiving. But what I wanted to say too, he also mentioned the scripture in St. James. It doesn't say, if any of you is sick, it literally says, go to the elders and they will anoint you. So, and I think, what I'm trying to say is, I think there is definitely a balance and a time and a place, and there's severity.
No, if somebody asks for, like when it talks about faith without works, right? If somebody needs something to eat, don't just say, okay, I'll pray for you, God be with you, be warm, or be fed. Go, give them the food, give it to them.
Well, let me just clarify.
Yeah.
أنت كنت حضرتك بتتكلم على how to protect the faith, right? To protect the faith, we cannot add or subtract. We cannot take or add.
Correct.
According to the last chapter in the book of Revelation.
Yes.
So if we have the faith, if we have the Bible, and add to it therapy, that is not keeping the faith. It's not keeping. If we want to get healed, if we want to heal the people at the church, it's by the Word of God and only by the Word of God.
Okay.
At the church.
Let me take one more, and then we'll. No, I really appreciate your point. So, and I appreciate your like being clear about your point because it helps us to respond to it as well. So let's take this comment, and then we'll pause on this point, and we'll come back to it in the end because I think it's a very important discussion.
I just want to bring into attention that the first lecture was about challenges in those who we serve, and the second lecture was about challenges in spirituality. And one of the themes that we kept saying over and over again is prayer and guidance. Prayer and guidance. So that's a very faith-based approach. I think right now we're talking about organizational challenges. And so as an organization, as a church, or a church that's part of a diocese, even the Pope, one of the things that we're continuing to do is to bring in different allies to help. So when there's an issue with education, we built a school called ACTS in the diocese to help with education. When there's an issue that we're facing with social issues and mental health issues, we're paying attention to that part now. And the equity is we're trying to build different services to combat different issues that are happening within us. So I think I like the sort of the team approach to combating some. But I think the foundation of all of that and the basis of all of that is exactly what you're talking about, Dr. Sharif, which is scripture, biblical truth, faith, the fathers, and all of those layers are built upon those as like a sort of a multi kind of disciplinary team perspective.
Yeah. And let's come. Can we come back to this? I love it. I love this
One
point.
last
Yes.
point. One last point.
Okay, sure.
You see Christian counselors. Do you know what Christian counselors are? It's just.
So how about this? I really I genuinely love this topic. So let's come back to it.
I'm gonna shut up.
No, it's okay. Say the next thing after. Like I want to keep talking. It's a good discussion. And does anybody else want to say anything before we continue? I really like this point.
I finish your topic.
Okay, sure.
Points and then-
Okay, all right, we'll come back.
It's not lost. I think you were talking about somebody coming to the church who doesn't talk to anybody.
That's the last point I was making. Yes.
That's the last point.
Yes. Thank you for.
Yeah, I'm not adding this to fun.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I can tell you as a Christian counselor, that's a good thing to do. So let's finish these points and then we'll come back to it, because I think it's important to understand like what's the primary, what is the function of the church in the life of mankind in the world. What is the church doing in the world? Because the church has a responsibility towards God's creation. The church has a responsibility towards God's creation. What is the scope of that responsibility? This is the question, right? And how do we carry it out? But we'll come back to that. So the causes balancing between seniority and meritocracy. What are the causes? It's very hard to balance the needs of many people. We're talking about, just to remember what we're saying, is that the collectivistic and the individualistic culture, one respects seniority and one respects meritocracy, right? And this is kind of, don't think of it as but this or this, think of it as like a spectrum, right? Because even we're saying sometimes you could be in the same culture, but within a church community and somewhere, they have different versions of the same thing, right? So think of it as a spectrum, right? So it's very hard to balance the needs of so many people. This is a fact. This is probably not going to change for a while, by the way, right? It's hard. Also, those from the individualistic culture can seem very selfish, right? Let's just say it, right? They can seem very selfish. Like, who are these people, right? All they care about is themselves, right? They don't care about anybody else. Right? And so when you see someone who seems selfish, you're not that motivated to help them. You kind of just, you have a group of people who are friends and they talk to you and they call you and you call them and you hang out and you do this and you play games and whatever. And then there's this kid or this person coming from their individualistic culture. They don't want to talk to anybody and whatever, and they're very focused on their own goals. So you don't want to, you feel less motivation to help them. Also, another cause is that the type of communication style that works best with each group is very different. The communication style that works with one cultural group is different from the one that works with another cultural group. Let me give you an example, right? When you come to, my experience personally when I've been coming to this church is it's more of like the traditional kind of Coptic church in America, right? And with a big mix, it's big, a lot of activities, very beautiful things. So, I always feel the difference because sometimes I go to churches that are like very modern, like very, very, all English speaking, all young people, right? And that's it, right? Like people at most 30, 34, 35, right? And so when you come to a church like this, there's a lot of deference, there's a lot of la la la, and one person walks in first, right? And you do all this, right? Is that bad? No, it's not bad. It's not bad. But then you go to these other church communities and everybody's just walking in, right? Is anybody upset with anybody? Everybody's happy, right? But it's just different. It's just different, right? And you can see, for example, like I come from a church that's like more like this, right? You sit in a meeting of servants, right? The oldest servants have much stronger weight in what they say, right? And for me, it's automatic. It's automatic. When my older servant is speaking, I'm gonna wait. I don't feel bad. I'm just gonna wait, right? But in other types of church cultures, you find that it's more like dynamic. Everyone is speaking, right? Everyone is kind of working as an equal. I am not saying one is better or worse. I'm just saying the needs are different. The communication style is different.
And what kind of church is that?
What kind of church is
That they actually focus more on the individualistic.
Honestly, it happened. What's interesting,
This is not our church. This is not Coptic church, right?
actually, there actually are a lot of Coptic churches that are coming together this way. And you know, by the way, you don't choose it. It happens organically. Like, it just
And you
happens.
mean by that the newer version?
Yes.
There's a newer English.
Yeah, and I'm not speaking, this is more of, I don't mean to speak about any specific one. I'm just saying a general point because I haven't been to all of them. But I'm just trying to say that it happens organically, right? Like for example, some churches, the way they came about was just some people moved to an area and they really wanted a church. And so a church got created. They asked the bishop for a priest, and it got created. It could be people who all were people who were born here, and they grew up here, and their parents were born here, and they all moved to this one location, and they started a church, right? So they have their way, right? It's not about, and so they might have less diversity, but some churches have big diversity, and it's a challenge. Because you have to reach everyone. It's hard. I'm not saying like the solution isn't to force. Go ahead.
And here you're speaking about the kinds of the servants that we have. That we also have that big diversity among the kids we see.
Yes.
So there are some kids who just came from that collectivistic culture.
Yes.
And some who just came from this newer kind of like individualistic.
Yes.
Born here.
Yes.
Others came from Egypt.
Yeah.
And you have both in the same class.
Yeah.
They act differently.
Yeah, and you're gonna see that the kids who come from the individualistic culture, and you're their servant, sometimes they will often treat you as an equal.
Right.
They will just tell you, they'll talk to you straight, right? And if you are not able to manage this difference, you're going to feel very disrespected. And once you feel disrespected as a servant, you're gonna push the child away. Don't talk to me unless you talk to me the way I want to be spoken with, right? Which is not the spirit of the servant.
Right.
The spirit of the servant is, I became a Jew to the Jews, as one without law to those without law, right? This is what St. Paul said, right? None of this is compromising the faith. This has nothing to do with our faith in the Trinity and the sacraments and tradition and the clergy and anything, right? This is serving. There are needs, right? The kid needs help. The kid needs someone to support him. Needs a role model. Needs something, right? Does that answer your question? Thank you. I'm not saying, again, I keep saying this, I'm starting to sound like a broken record. I'm not saying one is better than the other. Please don't take that message from me, okay? It's just very different, and our responsibility is to be aware of the differences, okay? Also, actually, I just put it right here. I didn't know I put that there. It's easy to see as one system as good and one as bad. It's easy to do that. You say, these kids have no respect, or these people, they don't know what they're doing, right? What do you do about it? Be aware of the differences and do not fight them. Work with them. Work with the differences, okay? In most larger church communities, it works best to have services that target each group, right? It works best, like this example of the people who want to play backgammon, right? That's great, right? That's great, right? There's a group of people who want to play. Let's do it, right? And I remember there was one church, they have maybe 300 young adults, 300, right? About 1/3 is like very English speaking, and the other 2/3 are very Arabic speaking, right? Like they're happy. They're happy. Everybody's happy, right? So they have two young adults meetings. Everybody is served. Everybody's happy. Actually, it multiplies the number of servants, right? And some people go to both. Or some people are in the middle, right? They like to go to both, right? Anyone can have some leadership as long as they work in harmony with the rest of the servants and do not compromise the faith of the church. Okay? So let me just say that again. We need to, as good Christian people, we do not want to have a monopoly on leadership. Okay? This is different from the organizational structure of the church with the clergy. Because in addition to the clergy, there's a lot of people serving, right? The clergy can't do it alone, right? And they bless all this work, right? And they guide us. So we are not going to have, none of us are going to have a monopoly on leadership, right? We share with each other. We work in harmony together, right? So anyone can have some. Now, I'm not saying that everyone can have this much leadership. I'm just saying anyone can have a little piece of leadership and responsibility, as long as they work in harmony with the rest of the servants and they never compromise the faith. Okay, you guys get what I'm saying? So encourage this, right? Like give up something if you can. If you have a responsibility and you see, hey, I can do this, but this person, they never did anything, and maybe I can give them and work with them. Give them something, right? And if it's significant enough, ask the leaders of the church, ask them for their guidance, if it's a good idea to do this, right? Also, the highest levels of, we only have one more thing after this, so thank you guys for your patience today. The highest levels of leadership in the community must be selected carefully and should include people who are sensitive to the needs of all the members of the community, right? So the highest levels of leadership need to be sensitive to all the needs, okay, of the community, right? And this can be done by adding members from the different groups of the church, or at least by having the leadership hear from all the different groups. Like, they have to be aware, right? Because sometimes, when a small church becomes a big church, the leadership team has not evolved. And it needs to evolve to be able to understand the needs of everyone, okay? The last point, organizational challenge. Is everybody with me so far? I know it's warm and we're tired and all this stuff. You guys are doing great. When we talked about the personal and spiritual challenges, we spoke about that I have to invest in myself, right? But now I want to also tell you that the church has to invest in you. Okay? And who is the church? You're the church. We're the church. We have to make investments in developing the servant. The servant, we have to invest in developing the servant, right? It is critical that the person of the servant is healthy, and this is the responsibility of both the servant and the church that develops the servant. Okay? Last time in the second talk earlier today, we spoke about I have to work on developing myself. Today, right now, I'm talking about us as servants have to work on developing the servants. We're both responsible for this. Okay? On average, most of the investments in our servants have to do with religious education. Is this wrong? It's not wrong. It's actually critical. It's necessary. You cannot serve if you don't have basic fundamental understanding of the Christian faith. It's a prerequisite. There's no compromise in this. Please, okay? Like in general, especially if you're in a position where someone can talk to you. Remember what we said about Saint Stephen? Remember that? They're going to serve the tables, but they want people who are full of the Holy Spirit and wisdom. And then it said they were not able to resist the words with which he spoke. Right? Even though he was ordained to serve tables. Okay? So, I covered this point a lot about the importance of the faith. So I'm trying to cover the other to balance this out with that we cannot just do religious education. There's a lot of other things we have to do, and I'm going to list them for you, right? But what happens when we're only doing religious education is that we end up having very informed servants who might not be very effective servants. You get what I'm saying? Like, they know the faith, but then you put them in front of someone in need, they don't know what to do. They're stuck. Right? Remember, even the demons believe and tremble. The demons are the perfect example. They're like the extreme example. They know the faith like the best you're going to possibly know, but they don't do anything good with it, right? We're not that bad. We're not bad. We're trying to do good, but we don't have things that we need to know to do well. What are some of those things?
Can I just say
yes
here? But before Sharif actually goes on you.
Yeah, I know everyone is going to jump on. I knew this was the most sensitive one.
I would choose a different word here.
Sure.
Than know the faith as live the faith.
Sure. know the faith and live the faith. Of course, I actually am assuming that.
You can know the faith as much as you want.
Yes.
But living the faith is different. And this is what Sharif was saying.
Can I love that point, and I still want to add something to it. Sure. Okay.
How do we talk about faith and Noah has faith? He knows that knowledge, he has knowledge, he has the knowledge of the word of God, but he doesn't submit to it.
Yes.
So
yes.
faith is knowing in the word and submitting to it. This is the living faith. اللي هو المفروض الservants have.
Yes.
Completely different from just knowledge.
On top of that, I agree. I like 100.00% agree. I agree completely. On top of that, in addition, we also need some skills.
I absolutely agree.
Like we need skills to do it. Like because we are called to do something. It's kind of like you have the faith, but when you have the faith, can you ride a bike necessarily? No, you got to learn how to ride the bike.
Even Makar, remember in the selection of Israel, didn't they skilled artisans?
Yes.
Skilled, and then
I thank you for that example.
Actually, when God chose Moses, he had the faith, he had the life, but he didn't have the skill. He didn't know how to speak.
Yeah. And in that example, God wanted a speaker. In that example, right? And it's a question of should Moses have submitted to God or not? That's a different topic. But it's a skill, right? Like we need the faith, we need to live the faith, and then we need to learn things too. And I want to list some things just for us, okay? Just a quick list, right? But I just want to be clear. I put this parenthetical here because I knew this was going to come up. There's a lot of questions. Like anytime I talk about this, someone says, "But you need the faith." I know we need the faith. So that's why I put in addition to robust religious education. We need really good religious education, okay? But we also need, in addition to that, we need to learn about leadership. We need to learn about it, right? We need to learn about emotional intelligence. We need to learn about time management. We need to learn about contributing to a healthy organizational culture. How do we operate as a group of a few hundred people, even 50 people, even 20 people, even 5 people? We need to learn more about public speaking. I remember I was teaching pre-servants for so many years, and I never taught the kids how to give a lesson. What's wrong with me, right? And we give them, we tell them the contents of what should be in the lesson, but we don't tell them how do you prepare a lesson. Like what do you do? And you know something? It's a skill, which means you can learn it. Like you just need to learn how to do it, and you do it. That's great. And we all know the difference between the servant who knows how to prepare the lesson and the one who doesn't. It doesn't matter how much they know. You're just going to zone out. You're not going to pay attention. So it's an informed servant, but an ineffective servant. Do you guys get what I'm saying? And so I said to myself, I'm going to make a lesson on how to give a lesson. And I said, here are a few ways to do it. Here's how you outline your lesson. Here are the resources you have to use. Here are some principles and things that you cannot compromise. Here are who you contact if you have a question. Like, we told them how to do it. And you know what they were complaining about before this? Is, I don't want to be a Sunday school teacher because I don't know how to give a lesson. Even though for years we're teaching them all the content. Right? So we need to talk about it. It's a skill, guys. This is just a skill.
How about talent? Because also sometimes, like St. Paul said, when you talk about the talents, it's in teaching. So
yes,
we also not just this, not everybody, even if you teach them the skill, have the talent to teach. Or
yes, and so what I just for those who didn't hear Ahuna's question is, how about where is the role of talent and like gifts as well, right? I want to tell you like what our responsibility as Christians is to go to the maximum potential we have. Right? So maybe you're not going to be like, we have many wonderful teachers in our church, like Abuna Dawud. I could listen to him I could listen for 10 hours. Like, and sometimes when he does a retreat, he gives 10 lectures in one day, right? So, and he does it, and he's fine, by God's grace, right? And he's working very hard. But what do? We just have to, if there's a way to learn how to be better, I'm going to learn. Okay? If there's a way to practice, I'm going to practice. If I can ask for feedback, I'm going to get it. Maybe I'm not going to get to that level, but I have to learn and grow as much as I can. Okay? So please, guys, go to your full potential. Okay? Don't let shyness and a lack of self-confidence interfere. Because Proverbs says the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught. Right? Like you do the best you can and let God take care of the rest. Okay? And don't forget, guys, any of us, we go to work and our boss says give a presentation, we are all going to give the presentation, right? You're going to figure it out, right? And actually, there's a lot of groups like called Toastmasters, for example. A group you just join, and everybody prepares a topic, and they keep presenting to each other, and they give each other feedback, and they get better, right? So the goal here isn't only about public speaking. Think about leadership, emotional intelligence, time management, all this stuff, right? Grow. We need to be, the point of this challenge, which is the last one, is that we need to be, as servants, developing these things in our servants in addition to robust religious education. And what I mean by robust religious education, meaning they know and understand the faith, not just repeating memorized statements. They understand the faith, right? In addition to that, we need to be teaching these things. Like, if a servant, you become more emotionally intelligent, into robust religious education, you're going to be much more effective, right? Like, much more. Did you have something to say?
I just wanted to ask if you can give a small definition of what emotional intelligence is.
I'm sorry. I assume. Thank you for that. Thank you. What is emotional intelligence? Sorry. There's four components. Okay? The first two are about the self, and the other two are about society, about others. Okay? The first is four components. The first two about the self are self-awareness and self-management. Okay? So what that means is I have to be aware of my own emotions. What am I feeling? The second component here is self-management. Now that I know my emotions, I need to manage my emotions and manage my behaviors in response to those emotions. You know, some people, they get angry and they lose control, right? Do they even know that they're angry? Sometimes you ask someone who's angry, what happened? They're like, it's a blur. I didn't even know what was going on. Once I got angry, I didn't even know what was happening. This is poor self-awareness and very poor self-management. The other two components are social awareness, so you know the feelings of the people around you, and relationship management. So now when you know what the feelings of the people around you are, you can now manage the relationships around you because you have more awareness of what everyone is feeling, right? This is it's a separate talk, but this is what emotional intelligence is. If you as a servant become good at those things, like, that's a big jump, it's a big leap, and it's something you can learn, right? You just have to practice it and read about it. You know how I learned about it? I read. I attended trainings. Like, we all can do it.
But I mean, and that's why these things are very important, and especially let's say if you take emotional intelligence. It was something that you spoke of, for example, and we talked about it in our icebreaker. Some of the challenges is you get triggered by one of your kids. They say something, I feel disrespected, or I got angry, or something like that. So if I'm not able to manage that emotion, I'm going to go blow up on this kid, or I'm going to say something inappropriate, or I might feel disrespected by a parent and respond in a way that isn't very wise. So if I'm not able to manage my emotion and respond, then that can cause me problems in my service. So yes, it's very important to have these aspects, on top of the fact that I'm very knowledgeable about my faith and very knowledgeable about my Bible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you said it. Remember the kiddo was telling you, no. Yeah. What did that do? It enraged you. Like, what?
I was probably a little aware of what was happening in my own emotions, but I
didn't know how to manage it.
I didn't maybe manage myself as best as I could.
And we've all fallen into that. We've all gone, it's gotten the best of us in one way or another, not necessarily anger or anything like that, but even time management, even being a leader. Actually, our retreat last couple of years, it was about leadership. That was part of our. That was the topic is leadership. So yes, those things are very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Yes.
Go ahead.
But can you not forget your question? Please don't forget. Okay, I'm just saying it because if I get kicked out, I just want to finish my points before I get kicked out. So, we also need to invest in healthy sorry, healthy sexual understanding. Our understanding of sexuality is, on average, not any specific person here, but on average, is very limited, and we have very incomplete sources of information, and there's a lot of shame in this area in general. So we need to invest some time to understand what is sexuality in the way that God designed it, because it's very, very important. Also, we need to learn about the effects of abuse. This is something that, we're talking about it a lot more now, but it's not a new thing, right? We're talking about it a lot. Just to your question about, is the list evolving, right? How to prevent abuse, how to detect abuse, how to respond to abuse. Just a simple thing. I may have said this to you before. If someone says to you, if a client says to a therapist, I was abused in this way, one of the questions you're going to ask them is, who did you tell? Who have you told before? And you'll be surprised. Some people say, this is my first time I'm telling anybody. But let's just say they said, I told my mom or I told my dad. One of the next questions you ask is, how did they react? Why? Because sometimes, a lot of times, the parents or the person you tell, it doesn't have to be a parent, can react badly. And that reaction can be worse than the effects of the abuse itself. Someone can say, no, forget about it. Don't talk about it. Don't tell anyone.
Or it was your fault.
Or it was your fault. Yeah. So these are things we need to learn about. You guys with me so far? It's a kind of a tough point. Well, I'm almost done. We need to learn about addiction. Big topic. All these are big topics, right? All of these are entire things. We need to learn about reaching out to the community, right? It's a skill. So what are the causes? The reason why we have this issue or this challenge is because we over-attribute success in service to spiritual qualities or personality traits. We think that the successful servant, it's because they have a very special spiritual quality. But there's actually more. I don't want to use any names, but there are a lot of really amazing servants that all of us know and look up to. And every once in a while, I hear about what they do to develop themselves, what they're working on. I know one servant, anytime they're flying from one country to another, they have a plan to read a book on each flight, right? They want to make sure they're learning. Very experienced person, right? That same servant was working on their physical fitness. You won't even believe it. They're learning karate, right? They want to work on their physical fitness, right? So sometimes we over-attribute success. We over-attribute success in service to spiritual qualities and personality traits. We think that someone just has this personality, that's why they're good. But no, it doesn't work that way, right? We have not articulated simply and clearly what it takes to make an effective servant. We are glad to have whatever we have. Beggars can't be choosers here. I got these two people here. I'm going to take them and I'm fine. They're going to serve. Okay, they're going to serve. Thank God I have these two people, right? No, we say, okay, we have these two people. We have to invest in them. We have to work on them and invest, right? We don't know how to make the investments, partly because we weren't invested in ourselves this way. People didn't invest in us this way, right? And also, we're managing church the way we've always seen it managed. But remember, the church as an organization, not the faith, as an organization is evolving. So the way the church has to be managed also has to grow with the needs, right? What do you do about it? This is the very last slide, I promise, is we need to do more of what we're doing now. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. And please have fun and everything, but you please acknowledge that this is a time when your church is investing in you. The church is making an investment in you to make you a better servant, which it means you're going to have a better relationship with God, but also you're going to have more skills and knowledge and things, right? This is an investment, right? You're supposed to be, during this weekend, growing. I'm supposed to be growing. And returning back, like we said before, to the service as a more effective servant. This is what is supposed to happen during and after this weekend. Create a list of core skills that every servant needs and focus on building these skills one by one. And make sure that this list of skills, all the servants know it. What are the skills? You can make a list and see what is the gaps are. Or we can talk about it. And each servant should assess themselves against that list. Ask yourself, what do I need to grow in? right? Regularly invite experts to teach new skills. Some of these experts may already be in our midst. Just 3 months ago, I heard an amazing talk about abortion. Amazing talk. And it was by a woman who I think is from like the Greek Orthodox Church. And you know what was amazing? The bishop from another diocese was attending and learning from that talk, right? He was growing, right? And this woman, like, just did such an amazing job, like an amazing job. So we have to invite these experts to teach us, right? There's a lot of things out there. It's not like the only thing that's good in the world is the church, right? Christ is in his whole creation, right? Everyone is made in his image, but it doesn't mean that everything is right, right? Above all, do this in a systematic way, meaning put pen to paper. I literally mean it. Like, we need to sit down and write and work and plan and do, how do we invest in our people, right? Thank you so much for your patience today. There's a lot of things. Glory be to God forever, amen. You guys know the schedule. I think we're done.
بس احنا كان في ناس بتسأل على العشية وقلت لهم 8:30 بس هي if we can just raise the incense of the عشية وبعد كده we can continue because it seems like you have some questions and discussions. We can do that if that's okay with you.
So we can all see it on the screen and discuss it together. So the link on WhatsApp